All right, so in our group, we looked at mainly the tipping culture in the United States, in Europe, and in Rwanda, which I personally found very interesting because it's quite a difference. And I believe the US is very famous worldwide for its tipping culture, that we're kind of over tipping in comparison to other cultures. That, well, from a US point of view, it's absolutely necessary because we know that waiters and waitresses just make very little, and their income is dependent on what we tip. And if we're happy, well, then we should tip. Whereas in other cultures, they can't understand that because waiters and waitresses get a normal salary, they have health insurance, and they're fully covered, so they're not as dependent on the extra income that they make from tips, and therefore they can't really understand the system here in the US. So it's the idea of like Americans going to Europe or other places where they overtip, and waiters and waitresses are kind of keen on having a table full of Americans because they know, oh, we're going to make a lot of extra money tonight. Whereas Europeans in the US may seem like a little stingy, maybe at times, or unappreciative of the great service they got. And we've even heard stories of waiters coming to the table when somebody was visiting from Australia and wasn't tipping, complaining why they wouldn't tip and what was wrong with the service. And so we had that discussion, an extended discussion. We also heard that tipping in Rwanda can be either way. There might be a bit of a growing tipping culture in certain areas, whereas other areas it's detrimental, where it's almost offensive to tip someone. We also heard from restaurants in France or in Middle Eastern countries where it's really offensive because you're almost bribing the owner, or it's almost like too much, over the top. They didn't ask for it. They feel like no, you can't give me that extra money, and the owner of the store would run out and try to give the money back to the person who tipped them. So very, very different attitudes towards tipping. That I found that very interesting. And we just briefly touched on the idea of what you say when you take a photograph. I think cheese is almost universal, no matter what your language. A lot of people try to use it because it's become famous, and there might be some languages that have their own words. We haven't quite figured out which words that might be. We didn't get that far. But an interesting thing that we learned is that in Rwanda, people didn't really like to smile when taking photographs. You had to look serious. And it's just recently that they've adopted the idea of, okay, when we're taking a picture, just do this for a second. And maybe the word cheese is kind of emerging, but it's not a natural thing. It's more like a modern trend.
Justin, can I ask you do you think the value is behind that, with the photograph? I'd be curious what the thought is behind that, to be serious in a photo instead of smiling.
Okay, so
Justin, you want to talk about that?
Yes, I think we are very reserved culture, and you're not supposed to show your strong emotion, either happiness or excitement. So you have to keep the balance. And actually, when you show your strong emotions, happiness or being sad, sometimes people like see you as weak, that you can't control yourself. So yeah, so the smile in pictures, I think it's more related to us being serious, but I mean reserved. I think that's how I can explain this. Yeah,
that's very good. So it's an element of face and keeping your emotions in check, right? That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for tying that in for us. Tasha, did you want to add something? I'm sorry.
Sorry, Justin, I keep using you, but I thought there was a wonderful cultural point that we all need to consider. Justin, can you describe about how, when you were talking about how sometimes a good act of tipping can have negative consequences and the cultural dynamics? I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, So normally we're not a tipping culture. So the tipping culture is, is growing with the community, a restaurant, restaurants. And I also relate this to like how when we buy stuff at the market, we don't have fixed price, so you have to bargain. And I've seen most, expatriates coming and struggle to buy stuff. Of course, sometimes it's even way cheaper to what they're used to, so they will just give, And then during my class, I always remind them that not every giving is good. Sometimes you should always think about someone who's coming, after you, who can't afford. So they will be overcharged. And so sometimes the good act of giving or over tipping could be detriment to someone else. So you should be very careful as you tip or you give extra money.
Interesting.
I just wanted to add shortly.
Oh yes, please.
To the photograph, because I was just saying it before we got cut short.
Oh.
I was just realizing when I came to the US that American kids are much better trained at photo taking, having their photographs taken.
Yeah.
Because my kids, when we're on a holiday and we're like, come on, smile, and they're like, and American kids, already the very little ones, it's amazing. They're like, wow, beam, and everybody's like, yeah. And that's really so amazing. I saw that at once when we were here. So that's just a little funny story.
Now we see this. That's the new culture. I was just going to point out too, just because we're talking about tipping, maybe we could just have representatives pipe in about, anything to add that's different. And Angie, you had a great example about Malaysia and tipping, and I thought it was really interesting culturally how you do it. So do you mind sharing that, what you were sharing with your group?
Sure. It's Indonesia, actually.
Indonesia, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, that's all right. So tipping culture is not, it's common, especially for services, but it's not as open. So there's no rules of the amount. But the thing that we do is it's done discreetly.
Mm-hmm.
So usually if we give a bill, a dollar bill, then you have to roll it or fold it. And I gave an example in my group in a hairdresser, for example. So you don't give it out openly. You either just put it straight to their pocket, so maybe their back pocket, after it's being folded or rolled, or you shake their hand and you gave the money in the palm of the hand, or you put it in an envelope. It has to be covered, so you shouldn't show people how much you give, basically.
Right.
It's not that we're embarrassed or ashamed of giving, that's it, but it's just the culture. It's just the way it is. I think it, sorry?
That's so interesting. Is the fear that that you would be showing off that you're giving so much?
No, I don't. Maybe, I don't know. I think it's more of face saving the person that we give it to.
I see. That they might need it.
Yeah,
I see.
Because it shows that you're in a higher position when you give someone the tip.
There
No,
you
in
go.
the restaurant though. In the restaurant, we just put it on a tray usually.
Uh-huh.
But if it's like services, like direct service, courier, yeah. So, but it's not like it's not like it's corruption. It's not like we're embarrassed about it. It's just the way it's done.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Any other group have any other things different in different cultures about tipping? I think this is a nice way to do it if we're just on one subject, to just have input from each representative, if that would be okay. Anything else?
Actually,
in our group, I had talked about TIPS being TIPS, and it stands for to ensure prompt services. So the writer, Chinua Achebe, some of you might know, was the one who came up with that. And basically what it means is that when you give tips, your services will be ensured. That means that you probably will give it before, or there's a promise that it will be given before the services. And when you do that, you get you get served better and faster.
Wow.
So
the
the
mentality
idea
is-
of tips is to get prompt services. If you
Yeah.
don't give it, you probably, even at the end of it, if you don't give it, you probably would get some curses, as you go along. It might not be spoken, but you would feel that somebody is actually sending some negative vibes after you.
Yeah.
May I ask what country that is?
Nigeria.
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you. We can't see it,
Lagos,
so we-
Nigeria. It's
Okay.
different in other places. Lagos is a cosmopolitan space. So it's different when you go up north. It's different when you go to the southeast. But in Lagos, where nearly it's a coastal town, everybody comes there.
Wow, very interesting. Jeanette, you were going to add something to our conversation. I don't want to miss your voice.
Yes, in Switzerland, there was a lot of upset decades ago about tipping, and some people could afford more, and it was just not considered to be a wonderful social thing. So the government came in and said, we are going to put 10% on all restaurant bills, and we are going to take care of that. Because in Switzerland, and then the restaurant owners needed to pay proper wages and all the benefits and everything. So that's what it is here, so that we can tip, but we don't have to. And it's different in the different parts of Switzerland, the different language and cultural parts, whether you actually are a bit more generous or not. And often people just round up. If it's 89 francs, they'll give 90, or if it's 6.50 for a drink or something, they'll give 7. So they just really it's just a little gesture of thank you, of appreciation, but it's not seen as anything really for your income. It is, but that isn't why they're there. They already can count on their 10%.
Wow, interesting. Renata, thank you for getting us started on topics. Was there anything else we talked about? You talked about tipping, and anything else, any other topic before I let the next group sort of bring some other things up?
We just briefly touched on cheese and photo taking, and that was it.
Okay, great. Okay, so who would like to represent the next group? We have 3 groups, so anybody want to go? And who was in the Jeanette, your group? Were you with Renata? Who were you with?
No, I was with, I can see everybody's faces.
Well, let's have Jeanette's group go. Who was the MC? Okay. And and John, right? Oh, yeah. Why don't you guys tell us what you talked about? John, I think you started out with birthdays, so that's a new topic.
We talked a little bit about birthdays, and I specifically raised the practice of only celebrating your birthday on the actual birthday. My daughter-in-law is Russian, and at one point we suggested having an early birthday party for our grandson, and she was horrible. And we didn't understand what was going on. And eventually my son said, no, we don't do that. That's in Russia, you celebrate your birthday on the day. And then as other people chimed in, it seems that this is the custom elsewhere. But it's certainly not in the US, where, we make it convenient. And as somebody pointed out, this is my birth week or my birth year. So we tend to take a much looser approach to it. And I guess it's for those cultures where it might be important to celebrate on the day, it may be superstition that if I celebrate this early, I may not make it to my birthday. That's one explanation we had, but I'm not sure what other explanations are out there.
Mm-hmm. And anybody else have anything in their group that was discussed about birthdays that may be different about how we celebrate them and customs behind it and why? Thank you, Kurtia.
I talked about the Netherlands, that when you are celebrating your birthday, you'll be asked, what do you want for a gift? And that was very shocking for me, coming from Nepal, it's the opposite. You get what you get and you take it humbly. And also in the Netherlands, you rip it open immediately as soon as you get the packet, as if you don't have the patience to wait to see what's in it, and you have to react very enthusiastic about it. And if it's something you can wear, you wear it, and you have a fashion show immediately in front of all the guests. So that is something that I really had to get used to. So in the Netherlands, it's you're allowed to rip open the packet and be very enthusiastic about the content.
Right.
Whereas in Nepal, we keep the packet aside and we thank the person who gave it. And when everybody's left, when you're quiet, and you open it.
Yeah. This was my experience living in China also, was you have a great topic about when you open up the gifts. And I've had people tell me that in the US, when we have children's parties, you know, the child sits in the center and opens all the gifts right there at the party. And when we were having parties with people from India and China, they were very uncomfortable with that. So that's a really good point about even opening gifts, or when you receive a gift, it kind of leads into that. Birthdays are one of the reasons we do.
And I had a several hour long conversation, an ongoing conversation, I should say, with the Writers Club I ran for a while, with a group of mothers from various Latin American countries, South American, Central American countries. They were so surprised. In the United States, our children's birthday parties say, we have a party and it's from 2 o'clock to 3:30 or 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. And you should come right away, and you should drop off your children, and you should go away, and then you better be there on time. And then you should take your child and leave. And there were so many interesting cultural differences that I learned about. The reaction to that, they're like, why wouldn't you include the family, and why should I have to leave? And you're telling me to go away at 3:30? How rude! It was really an eye opener. Maybe some of you others have comments about children's birthday parties.
I experienced the same thing here in the United States with a friend who was from Colombia, very Americanized, completely. I mean, I didn't even think about her not being from the United States. Yeah. But when her child's birthday party came along and she invited my family to come, and I was trying to nail down what time are we supposed to be where, because we were touring a little zoo thing first and then going to her house, and, you know, when are you going to do gifts and when are you going to do this and that? And it's funny because I knew technically what they did in Colombia, but we ended up, you know, I was used to going to an hour or two party. We ended up spending at least 8 hours, and they hadn't even done the cake. And when we got ready to leave and said, well, we need to go, she said, well, that'll be okay. And I said, how long do you think this will continue? She said, about 2 more days.
Yeah, but it's such it's a celebration for families.
People were just not going to go home. They didn't have beds. They were just going to stay and, you know, crash on the couch and all this. And we're talking a lot of people. There were about 25 people there. And we were the party poopers after 8 hours. So I just, it's just amazing how you can get lulled into thinking that someone, assuming that they think the way you do about something like this, because there have been so many other similarities. They bought into so many other pieces of the culture. I've had that happen with several different people from different cultures, and it's like, of all people, I should not have fallen for that.
Yeah. John, you had someone in your group talked about, and I love the story about the birthday celebration tradition of the key. Share that. That was very interesting.
I think that was Coley.
Coley, I think that was you that gave us the beautiful story about that.
Yes, that was me. That was me. And I'll retell it. I'm a storyteller. That's one of the things I do for a living. In most 21-year-old girls look forward to that symbolic gesture. And there must be a photographer to also capture the moment when the mother hands over a key to the daughter. And it takes a prominent place in the family album. I leave it to your imagination and to your guests what you think the key symbolizes. Why is the mother giving the daughter at 21 a key? So that's, I would leave to your imagination. But it's something that in the 70s, right down to the 80s, I don't know whether it's still done now in Lagos, Nigeria. It was something that all families did. No matter what it was, that photo, and you would see it, it's always performed. You see the mother handing over, the daughter receiving it, and the cameraman will take it. If you don't take any other photo, that is an important one.
Wow. I love that story.
And only
Any guesses to
only,
what's behind that?
Only women, Colin? Only girls?
Only girls. I have never heard of, why does the guy need a key anyway? There's nothing locked. You need to imagine it to understand why the woman is now, why the daughter, the mother is handing over the key to the daughter. She can come in and go out as she likes. But I mean, from age 18 or so, boys start going out without permission.
That's very interesting, because my first thought, and that's obviously an incorrect thought, was, oh, she's handing over the keys to the house. See, that this is my first thought, and it's a very incorrect thought, apparently, I've realized, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. What else would it symbolize? So we're so culturally different that we wouldn't assume anything else, but a key has something to do with handing over control of the house, for example, or making sure, like my house is now your house, or something like that. Yeah.
The symbolism is just so interesting.
Yeah, because to me, the key symbolizes house, nothing else.
Well, remember that it's a symbol. It's not a real key.
I know, but
it's a key,
to me, it symbolizes control over the house, for example. That's what a key symbolizes to me.
Yeah, but if you take it a little, that the body is also a house.
And see, I wouldn't have thought of that like that.
Yeah, the body is also a house, and this is the key. Let people in, or let them stay out.
I think it has a lot to do with my idea of being totally in control of my own body, which is culturally different, apparently.
Yeah, but the control, it's not that the daughter is not in control, but it is saying that this is a time where we will be welcoming, we will welcome somebody into your life. We're ready at this point.
Oh, wow.
We're saying from now
on, she's a woman now? Does it mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's a rite of passage.
A rite of
passage that says, and that's the thing with the culture I come from. All of these milestones are celebrated. And I don't know the origin or how they started with a key. And I think it's an urban thing to make up for what usually happens, because the matrons, once a woman gets to that age when she can actually have a child, all the older women would bring her into a circle and they would have a right of. That was what used to happen back in the grassroots, in the rural area. But when they came into the city, where you don't have that kind of thing, I think somebody just came up with this clever thing. The rite of passage can now be encoded as a key.
Coley, thank you for sharing that.
It means more than just the house.
Okay.
I'm aware of that.
So before we